Design and construction is risky business, but you're not alone in looking for strategies to manage that risk and maximize your success. Welcome to the Design Build Institute of America's Design Build Delivers podcast. I'm Kim Wright at DBIA's national headquarters. Whether it's finances, schedule, cost escalation, people problems, supply chain, geotech, okay, you get the idea. Project challenges can be overwhelming, but they don't have to be. Today we talk about how the best design build teams tackle risk early and often. Greg Gidez is a DBIA fellow and the director of design services at Hensel Phelps. Pat Crosby is also a designer and president of the Crosby Group. Pat kicks off our conversation today. Managing risk. Every successful design build project, they got to figure out how to do that, and yet it's just not that easy. Start at the 10,000 foot level. Tell me a little bit about where managing risk fits into the project conversation when you're talking to design build teams.
Oh, it starts before the project, right? You have to decide, can I afford to chase this one? Do I know the client well enough? Do I have the right team? And that's really important. If you just get a contractor, any contractor, or a contractor who just gets any architect or designer, it may not be a good marriage and doesn't have a chance of winning, and you're gonna spend a lot of money and take a lot of risks, and you're never gonna win.
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning. Yeah, and a lot of both designers, and when I say designers, engineers and architects, when a project comes along, they get so excited, they gotta have it, and they're not necessarily good business people. And so they make decisions on emotion rather than on business. And looking at the business of a design build project is just as important as enjoying and celebrating the win. And as Pat said, not everybody who knows how to design build, and not everybody knows how to build can be a design builder. It takes a special breed of people that are relational based and not transactional based in order to succeed at design build. And so if you think it's all transactional and you forget the relational part, you're going to get in trouble.
And that is part of the evaluation when you're looking at your teammates, and you may have one bad team member that really could bring the whole team down. So you've got to be very realistic and not just rah-rah about it. It is a pay-to-play scenario, right? You're really going to risk your own money to see if you can win this project. You better make sure that you have all the right players, right? Just not your son, that's not the key ones. You need to know, have they done it before? Where's the weak link and how weak is it? Because there's always one. You just want to know how weak is it and will it ruin your chances of winning?
Yeah.
Because we do talk about collaboration all the time, but yet that's somewhat hard to define. I mean, what is it really? I mean, truly.
Well, we talk about collaboration, but we don't talk enough about integration. Collaboration is agreeing to work together as a team. Integration is agreeing to work together as a team towards one common goal. And that's what makes a difference between a B team and an A team, is that they're all focused on the outcome and they're working collaboratively to get to that outcome, and it's a team effort.
Yeah, and think about the dynamics of the people. You got a contractor who's not to pigeonhole everybody, but they have a certain behavior. Architects another, engineers obviously another, and now you're telling them to all play together and play together well, and they don't have the communication skills or the experience with the other types. They've always been on the other side of the table or in a different room or a different office, and now you really need to play in the same room. And it's hard. And
shifting risk is not always managing risk, right?
Well, the shifting risk is very important. I wouldn't call it shifting, I call it assigning. And you assign the risk to the party that's most capable of managing it effectively. So you just don't lay it on the whole team because the whole team can't take it. And where is the risk in a design build project? It's in the design phase, it's in the procurement phase, and it's in the construction phase. It's all the way across the project. And so you've got to understand where the risks are and then figure out ways to mitigate the risks. From a design perspective, the risks are drawing things and designing things that are of no value to the end game, and they have to be redone in order to get them back into budget. The risk is is not being able to defend yourself against a contractor that doesn't understand the value of design and understands what the owner's outcomes are. And therefore, you not only put the project at risk, you may put your reputation at risk as well. And then there's always the financial risk.
And the owner, right? The owner could be the biggest risk. If the owner looks at just pushing all the risk onto the design builder, you probably don't want to play on that project, right? You just, I know there are some federal owners who just look at design build as, I have no risk anymore, and design build takes it all. And you can't do that. He's one of the players, and he has to understand the risk, and she has risk in the project, and they should understand it, what that is, and they should acknowledge it to the design build team, right?
And that's not a static process, too. That evolves as the project.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely evolves.
You know, in a good design build, the players who have never done that going into it will come out totally different, have a totally different approach to the industry, and that comes from that learned experience of the experienced and knowledgeable team guiding or leading the novices to success. Now, when we talk about risk, one of the things that we'll focus on, one of the words of wisdom is choose your partners wisely. There's nothing more that can be said than choose your partners wisely. You may have an architect that can do beautiful architecture, but can they work in that collaborative environment where they have to compromise their vision or their egos in order to for the value and the outcome for the project for the owner. So you've got to set your egos aside and really focus on what the project needs, not how do I enhance my portfolio for the next project. If you do a good job and you're successful, the natural outcome will be a recommendation from that owner to the next owner to go hire that team. That's the best thing you can walk away with is the opportunity for another job, not a one and done scenario.
Yeah, we were just on a project, unfortunately it was canceled, but we were awarded because the owner, and I learned this from the owner, and it said, I sent my team out among the two players, two design build teams to find out who was the better team. And he said, you guys won because my guys came back and said it was very difficult for us to understand who was who, because everybody was engaged, everybody understood everybody's business, and they all wanted to be successful. So it wasn't the levels weren't clearly defined. It was kind of just a mesh of people trying to be successful for the project. And that's what it takes, right? You can't put on your architect hat or your engineer hat and stay siloed. You have to be engaged. You have to learn everybody else's business and trade to help them succeed, and they'll help you succeed.
And that's where the innovation comes from, too. You learn things you didn't even know you didn't know until you get together as a group.
You know what the silver lining is in non-design build projects, my engineering team now is better because now they understand everybody's process and they can design to it. And so our documentation is so much better now than if I just continued on the risk of bid build. Yeah. It's changed.
Yes, and every party in the process has a different risk, whether it's in the design or it's in the execution of the work. And I've got a story that I like to tell from my personal experiences on a project. It was a design build project. It had bridging documents. I sat the team down and went around the room, starting with the general superintendent. I said, what do you see as the biggest risk on the project? And he says, well, I'm not going to be a general superintendent. I'm going to be a community relations outreach person because we're going to be pounding 1,000 precast piles into the ground in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and I am going to have nothing but headache and grief for the next 9 months. Went around the table to the next person. It was the plumber. The plumber says, well, the water table is at 11 feet. The underground slabs are at 19 feet. You got precast pile caps. It's a really terrible situation for me to have to waterproof my penetrations and get everything right. It's a very tough thing to do successfully. Sustainability consultant came along and said, well, you know, the owner wants the most sustainable building in California. How can we achieve sustainability? You know, we got a bridged building here. A lot of things are already set. We need to come up with some solution. went around the room and identified everybody's biggest risks like this. And then the landscape architect who came along, who had a pocket park about 30 feet by 10, says, has anybody ever done a mat slab foundation? And the structural engineer says, we could do a mat slab. And the sustainability consultant says, we could dump a power plant of fly ash into the concrete mix in the mat slab and we'll get a lead point for that. And the general superintendent says, well, if we're going to do a mat slab, I'm not pounding in the neighborhood. Forget the sensors on all the buildings, forget all the community outreach. We can start digging the hole the day we get awarded the job. And we proposed a mat slab foundation. We're awarded the job. That accelerated the construction by 10 months. And the outcome was the owner, we reinvested all the savings into sustainability aspects, floor distribution, PV panels, our fly ash, and we delivered the project on budget 10 months early for the owner. Meanwhile, right across the street, the owner was building 3 identical buildings to ours, and they finished 3 months late. Wow. So it was all of identifying the risk and then collectively solving the risk as a team and coming up with the best solutions. Now that's the risk all the way across the board from soup to nuts, but the risk starts right up front with the designers. And
yes, it does. Yes. It's expensive. There's no the two-step, whether it's bridged or unbridged. If it's bridged, you save a little bit of money because it's already, the design's somewhat there, and you can convince your contractor to use most of that for pricing. But you still have to develop documents, and you develop them at risk. But if it's unbridged, then you're doing everything from scratch. And the time frame to get all of those ideas and get them priced in such a short time, it makes it difficult. And it's the risk of win, lose, and quite frankly, if you win, that might be the biggest risk because now you're obligated to match that price with your project, right? And so it's fun because it is a team, right. And that's what differentiates. We always thought before that we were team. This is the design team, but we never did any teaming things, right? We did our structural, they did their architectural. We interengaged a little bit. But predominantly we were siloed. We did what we knew what to do. But now with design build, you are truly a team and you're engaged all the time. You're communicating all the time. You're going through the BIM model all the time, almost on a every other day basis. It's that important.
Well, and it's interesting to me too that I think one of the strengths and hallmarks of design build has been its evolution over time. As the industry changes and technology changes, we've seen design build grow as well. And so when we get to the varying ways that you can do design build now, it's not a static one way. The collaboration is inherent in all of it, but whether we're now talking progressive or
well, that's it exactly. Progressive I'm excited about because what it does in the traditional two-step, and let's say it's bridged, that the owner gets a very close relationship with the bridging architect. And then in the design build team, we bring an architect on board and they hardly engage with the owner at all compared to the first one. So the owner is split on where the loyalties lie, right? Whereas progressive, you get picked on your quals and then the owner comes in and is a team member from day one. I love it. I think that's the way we should do all design build.
Yeah, and there's a lot of inherent risk in a bridge job that may not be evident when you get the documents and get into it. And a lot of owners say, well, we've taken the design to 30% or 60%, so you only have 40% to finish here. But the truth of the matter is, I'm at risk with my professional license. And I'm not going to stamp anything that I have not unwrapped and rewrapped because I don't know what was the process that went into the decisions that were made that got me to where I'm at with the bridging documents. And so I'm at risk if I don't go all the way back and then redo it. And so the owner has just spent more money than he needed to because he's paying the AE1 to do the bridging documents, and then he's going to pay his design build designers 100% of their fees because they have to undo it and rewrap it in order to manage the risk. Now, in that whole one-step, two-step versus the bridge versus the progressive, although the design build has evolved, the fee structures that we look at have not evolved to match the difference of the delivery method. For example, as a contractor, In the old world, when we in our estimating team, we say, well, if you get 3 out of 10, you're doing pretty good. It's like baseball, right? And you build that into your business model. Designers were always qualification based, and now we're asking them to go at risk to put together a design proposal. And if there's a stipend, well, it takes some of the sting off, but it doesn't take it all off. So you're at risk, you're putting your business at risk in order to compete for that project. If you win, great. You hope you make money. If you lose, you lost a ton of money, and you're gonna have to make sure you get the next one, or else you're not going to be in business.
You're going to need to get a couple more. State of California just did a series of buildings, and Mike Meredith with the state, I think, did a wonderful thing. He asked all the teams to start tracking their costs on the pursuit. And then we went after a $250 million O Street project, and we tracked our costs. Our cost for a $650,000 stipend, which was the allowance, was $2.2 million. So you take the difference, how do you recoup that money? Right? How many projects do you have to win and win well and be very profitable to offset that kind of loss? It is a gamble. And that's why I like that from a business sense, I like the progressive design build, because I'm not throwing a lot of money at risk. I'm doing my job, and I'm working with the owner from day one.
When you mentioned earlier the how important it is to be more selective about what you're going after. We're seeing headlines all over the place about big companies getting out of the business of the mega projects, mostly P3s. So, but it seems to be a bit of an evolution, and I don't know what that means for the future.
It means that owners got to be a little smarter about how they procure their work, and go analyze the market to determine whether the market can bear a mega project, or they really got to slice it up into a lot of smaller projects and take advantage of more of the marketplace to react, rather than a singular entity like that on the mega projects.
New York City is closing Rikers Island, and they're going to turn around and build 4 mega projects, so almost $2 billion each in the boroughs. We're going to put basically a jail in each borough. And they're here today to basically tell them, hey, we have changed. We have bought into the design, build, done right, and we understand the value, and they've reached out to a lot of people, talked to a lot of people. They just didn't read the manual and came and said, okay, we believe it. They worked hard getting there. Because they had a horrible reputation, and there are a lot of contractors that won't work in New York City. I'm hoping that changes based on what work they did to convince everybody they're a new owner.
Think about an owner coming to industry saying, tell us how we can be better.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
That's an enlightened owner.
Yes.
And they may need to be educated, but they are starting off at least enlightened, and that's good. One of the other things that I liked about the New York project was they said there was one RFQ for all the projects. Yes. And so you didn't, even if you're competing for, I'm going to go after 2 of them, you had one RFQ to get into the hunt. So that was very good.
That's a good sign, right? They understand the costs.
Yeah.
So
now, understanding the costs, that's a big risk. And what I hear a lot from the design professionals is, and this goes back also to know your partner and choose your partners wisely, is that a lot of contractors are very used to doing hard bid work, and so they count everything on the project. They know exactly what they got, and that's what they put the numbers on. In design build, when you're moving on the fly so fast, you need to conceptualize the estimates. And if you don't have a conceptual estimator that is putting money in to fill the gaps, then they get to when it all comes apart in the construction and the buyout, and they go back to the designers and say, well, you didn't have that in there. And it's like, wait a second, you didn't have it in your estimate,
for the
right?
fudge factor, right?
Right. You've got to conceptualize and fill the gaps and make sure you've allocated the right money, because the designer's E&O insurance is not the design builder's profit center, and it is typically you can't get to it anyway unless it's negligent, and negligence is a hard thing to prove. So the importance of having an intelligent, astute, conceptual estimator that is estimating the project, so that we're not looking to go to somebody's insurance policy to
Well, the design build teams have evolved. I remember early on, contractors were a little worried about the risk, and so they would ask the design team to basically take a year of design, compress it into 3 months, and come up with all the documents that they could basically hard bid. And it was a lot of work, and obviously you can't get a year's work in 3 months. And so there's a lot of missing pieces, and they would complain, hey, you didn't show that. I'm going, you didn't give me a year. Now they're getting smarter and realize the real benefit is for the team to identify roadblocks, hurdles, rather than give a framing plan or a door schedule or whatever that they know. They could price that out in their sleep. They rather have us look at being more creative, more innovative, rather than just do the same thing. They've got data for years and decades on that. They know exactly what the tonnage is going to be and what the current price is, and that's better design build, right?
Yeah. That's a true evolution.
Yeah, it has evolved well.
Another risk that I hear from the community is a lot of unscrupulous design builders think that once they get the design done and they've got it priced and scheduled, that they really don't need the design team. I find that's just the opposite. Because we're moving so fast through the design, there are going to be questions in the field, and you need to be Johnny on the spot there to answer the questions and support and fill the gaps in the design or interpret the designs so you don't have issues. Left up to the contractor, they don't understand the design, they don't understand where it's coming from, and therefore errors are made in construction that compound the issues with the design.
Because you start as a team, you end as a team.
Well, and that's one of the biggest risks, because now the contractor recognizes what people don't realize until they get to the design build world is how many other designers are really involved in taking the design documents and interpreting them via shop drawings to make it buildable. And there's a ton of other engineers and architects and such involved with the trades to get these packages ready to build. But when you have an integrated team, they're going to say, why do we need more engineers when we've got one? And why can't you, design the stairs and do the mechanical equipment and so on and so forth, which we can, but the fee has to be there. And that's the biggest hurdle, is get them to understand there's a whole restructuring of the fee.
Which goes back to what you were talking about before about team members understanding what other members of your team do.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the good teams understand that they may have to, some of the partners may have to give up scope in order to benefit the project as a whole so that they can even win the project. Right. So if you're only looking out for your own skin and you're trying to, fatten your pig right there, you may cost the rest of the team the job. So everybody's got to be thinking lean, and how can I help? Well, how can the electrical guy help the mechanical guy? How can the envelope guy help reduce the cost of the mechanical systems? Or maybe mechanical systems are the way to go, so let's go with a economical envelope because the mechanics are more important than the iconic appearance of the building. So you've got to understand really what the owner's vision for the project is and work towards that. Is it an iconic building or is it an efficient building? And so if you don't understand that, you're going to be at risk because you're not going to be able to fulfill the owner's vision for the project.
And there's another factor. I see this in a lot of bridge documents where the owner has had a bridging architect or design team, and they've worked a year on this and they've developed their bridging documents. And then the design build team comes in and they think in 3 weeks they've got a better idea. And I'm going, I can't tell you how many projects I've lost when the architect said, we have a much better idea. I'm going, you don't have that relationship to make that comment, right? And you don't know how it got there.
Just a few weeks, yeah.
And you don't know what the sacred cow is.
Yeah, exactly.
You might just, stick the pig.
Step right into what you didn't need to step into.
Right.
Exactly.
The most important thing to the owner was the color of the wall in the bathroom.
That's not, yeah.
And you went in and changed it.
Yeah.
How could you possibly do that?
Yeah.
So
What were you thinking?
if for those who are entering into a project and they're wondering about, how am I going to make this work? How is this going to be? The type of project you described that was so incredibly successful, and you both lived it and seen it. You know what it looks like. Of course, it's magic in a bottle, right? They're all completely different. What's the best thing they can do to go in and make sure that they are really managing their risk effectively as a team?
Choose their own internal team wisely. Find out who you think can really communicate, really provide services to others, and understand to be collaborative, to have trust. If your team's no good, you're no benefit to the rest of the team. So make sure that you pick players within your firm that can really behave as a team. And that's really important. And that's harder than you think. You think everybody gets together, and they don't. You know, there are a lot of people who don't trust and are really looking out for their own skin rather than the team's benefit.
Yeah. And you also have to consider the concept of managing up, because the decision makers may not be as wise as they need to be, and sometimes you need to help them get to where they need to be to make the right decision for the project. And you also need to manage up when you have an owner that thinks that now that you're on the team and you've got a fixed amount of money at the end, that they can just keep adding scope and changing things as they go through the project. So sometimes you have to say, no, Ms. Owner, you can't afford that. What would you like to give up in order to get that red door on your building? Exactly. And a lot of times that happens too late in the game because everybody's still in the sales mode and they're, oh sure, oh sure, oh sure. And then at the end of the day, we can't afford the project and something gets compromised. So yeah, it's managing down on your team and managing up.
And when it comes to the actual price of the project, so this project may have been evolved over 5 years, and it may have been priced out 3 years ago. And now with escalation and everything, you're going to the table, and I've seen it time and time again. You come to the project going, nobody could build it for that much money, right? In the Bay Area, we've had escalation of 11% a year, right? And if it's done 3 years ago, you don't have enough money to build this project. And owners need to be wiser, and you need to be wiser. You have to look at it and say, I don't think they can afford that project, and therefore we're not going to chase it, right? It's one of those things that if we don't solve this issue, it's going to happen all the time, because the government does a lot of design build, and they have this process that takes forever to get a project from first concept to, okay, we're ready to go design build.
Well, you know, if you listened to the listening tour, that is one of the sessions, you'll hear a lot of mention of risk and the challenges of the process. And when I analyzed all the issues that came from the listening tour and the risks that were identified, I had only one answer to it all. You need to get educated on best practices, because every one of those things that was brought up is addressable by understanding the process and applying those best practices, those design build best practices to your project. And if you do those things, that's how you mitigate the risk. But it's also identifying what are the risks for the project.
Know the risks, right?
Know the risk. Is it the
owner? Is it the budget?
Is it the marketplace? Is it my design team? Yeah. Is it my construction team? Is it my subcontracting community? Where are the risks?
What are those risks? DBIA will continue this conversation with design builders from throughout the nation at our Design Build Conference and Expo and the Federal Design Build Symposium in October. Learn more about our expansive programs planned at dbia.org/conferences.